The election of Barack Hussein Obama as President of the United States is perhaps the signature achievement for many Americans and for most African Americans of the decade of the 21st century. It is an achievement that all Americans should draw considerable pride. But the real and symbolic value of an Obama presidency does not obfuscate the continuing racialization of poverty, income, space, housing, and land use, the absence of high-quality child care for low-income families and children of color, low African-American male graduations and high dropout rates, employment discrimination, racial disparities in sentencing, redlining, disproportionate health care, voter suppression, the prison industrial complex, and the pervasive segregation across the entire spectrum of education, among other glaring inequities. The Obama presidency has drawn millions of marginalized and especially young people into the political process, re-energized that process, appealed openly and consistently to the best rather than the worst in us. Some of the more jaded among us, and that includes me, who thought his life was forfeit the minute he accepted the nomination, and I know I'm not the only one to believe that, are becoming more cautiously optimistic that he may survive not only his first term, but may live to run and win again. His achievements in the first year of his presidency are already more substantial than any other modern president, including Roosevelt, Reagan, and Clinton. But Obama, his administration, and even Congress itself are not enough to make King's dream an everyday reality. They collectively do not have the capacity. That endeavor requires the energy, commitment, and efforts of all like-minded Americans who believe that racism, individual and structural, sexism, heterosexism, linguicism, ableism, political bigotry and intolerance, and all other forms of social inequity should be dismantled and eliminated. Martin Luther King was taken from us by an assassin's bullet 41 years, 9 months, and 10 days ago today. Killed while standing on the balcony of his motel room in Memphis, Tennessee, too soon, and before his work was done. Since January 1986, as we have heard, and for 33 subsequent years, America, in spite of the opposition of Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina, of Senator John McCain of Arizona, in spite of the reluctance of Republican President Ronald Reagan to sign the holiday into law, in spite of the resistance of Arizona, New Hampshire, Virginia, and South Carolina to formally adopt and celebrate the King holiday, we have got them all to do it, and we continue this. And I want you to get a sense of the effort that it took. We embarrassed John McCain so bad that he persuaded Ronald Reagan. But people didn't forget that, and you saw that in the campaign. You saw how folks still held it against him because he came out vehemently against a Martin Luther King celebration. Whether he changed his mind politically or expediently, one will never know. But he did change his mind, and it was he that persuaded Reagan to sign this bill, or else we all going to be in trouble. We have come together in various venues resolving to make his dream real. We have sworn 1,000 oaths. We have resolved to do better. We have even created activity days to better commemorate the King holiday. So powerfully intoxicating is that dream that we often forget the enormous individual efforts and achievements of the man himself as an example of the kind of energy, effort, and commitment it might take to help flesh out a dream such as this. In 1954, Reverend King was a 25-year-old pastor and graduate student, pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, completing or trying to complete his doctorate in divinity. And although his ministry was always a social action ministry, him being a member of the executive committee of the NAACP, it was the murder of Emmett Lewis Till on August 28, 1955, 8 years before the March in Washington to the day. And then 100 days later, that Montgomery, Alabama seamstress said, "I am not giving up my seat for a white man to sit down," and was arrested. It was those two events that goaded him, that motivated him, like it woke up the rest of us living at the time. Now, I was 13 years old when I saw and heard about the funeral of Emmett Till. I may have been a little older than that, but that's all right. You can take it. 50,000 people marched around that coffin in Chicago that day. And it took more than Jet Magazine and word of mouth for us to get the significance. But somehow, we all knew that if they could do that to Emmett, none of us were safe. And that was the signature event that galvanized the consciousness of Black America to say we can no longer stand back and not do. We got to do something. And 100 days later, like the first shot fired across the bow, Rosa Parks says, "You'll just have to take me to jail. I am not getting up." Now, we would like to tell you that Martin Luther King ran immediately to the jail and bailed her out and said, "Let's do something." But he was still a young man, and he probably was looking ahead, thinking about his career and trying to assess the risks that were involved. But he did agree to lead the political action that they decided upon to protest this treatment. Thus was born in 1955 the Montgomery boycott. The Montgomery boycott was not just a Black folk action. It involved everybody in that community. What the Black folks had to decide to do is that we are not going to ride the bus, because they were the main riders of the bus. And when they were able to come together and do that, something not too difficult, it was inconvenient, but all they had to decide was, we are not going to ride the bus. And they did that for a year and 17 days and brought the city of Montgomery to its knees. Because if Black folks didn't ride the bus, there was nobody that was going to ride the bus. There would be no more buses. And so then we were able to call people to the table, and the vaunted negotiating skills of Martin Luther King began to gain prominence, and they worked out something so that in Montgomery, Alabama, from December 20th, 1956, regardless of your color, you could ride the bus equally. You didn't have to get up and give you a seat. The Supreme Court told you then on that day that to segregate by race in terms of riding the bus was unconstitutional and illegal.